So it's the last day of Christmas. Most people probably grew up singing the 12 days of Christmases. Well, this is day number 12. And, in our culture, a lot of times that the day after Christmas, everybody thinks Christmas is over. You put away the tree, you move on with your life, you get back to work. Maybe you go shopping, I don't know. But this the song "The 12 Days of Christmas" actually comes out of a struggle between a Catholic way of thinking and the Puritan way of thinking in England, where the Puritans wanted to say, let's strip everything down, let's make it as simple as possible. So yeah, we'll celebrate on Christmas, but then we need to move on with the rest of our life. And the Catholics retain this idea of celebrating the 12 days, and within that song they encoded different ways of passing on the faith. So each of the different days was lifting up something that was important to them. Now, again, in our society, the Puritan way kind of won out. That for most of us, you've spent 3 months preparing for Christmas, and then you get to Christmas Day, and then you go back, and it's kind of almost like you spend all this time setting up for this moment, for this time, this space where everything goes perfectly and just and right. And I don't know about anybody else. Sometimes I get to that week after Christmas and I begin to feel a little bit more like this. And there's lots of reasons for that. You step on the scale and you say, what did I eat? You open the bills that start coming in January and you say, what did I spend all this on? Maybe you've had some time off from work and you go back to work, and I can only speak for myself. So I came back to work on Wednesday of this week, and it didn't help that when I came back to work on Wednesday, it's gray and cold and rainy outside, and so I'm sitting here trying to write all of this, and what I see outside is this all day long, and it's one of those things that's just not motivating me to work. It's motivating me to want to stay on a couch with a blanket. But there is this sense to where there's a lot in our society that says, okay, Christmas is over, pack it up, get over it, and we're moving on to Valentine's Day. And I think we need this time, this space to kind of resonate in. Be able to say that, there's more to this season than we can hold in one day. There's more to this than that kind of ramp up towards this one point and then kind of drop off. And I know one of the struggles I have every year, and this is both at Christmas and at Easter, you pour yourself into what you do, or I do. And I come out after Christmas and I say, well, do I have any more words to say? Do I have anything more that I can contribute to this? Is there anything more that I can new that I haven't said already before? And I begin to question, okay, what are the gifts that I have? I feel like it's like at Christmas. You've given all the gifts to everybody else. Does anybody have a birthday right around Christmas? Got a few. So kind of, you have this big thing, and then it's like oh yeah, and happy birthday too. But I do believe that we do have gifts to give. We do have things that we can do. And then, as I get into the story of the Magi coming into Jerusalem, they didn't come in saying, what, we have the exact perfect gifts that we need for this situation. They brought that which was valuable to them. They brought that which they had. They brought that which they knew how to use. So, on Christmas Eve, we hear about Luke's gospel, where the angels are there, and you have the shepherds and everything else, and it's a very joyful telling. Matthew's telling of the Christmas story is a little darker. So when the Magi come in the second chapter, they come to Jerusalem, and there's a little line in there. The Magi start talking about, where is this child who's to be born King of the Jews? We've come so that we can pay homage to him. And there's a little line in there. And Herod was terrified, and all Jerusalem with him. A little background. So Herod, otherwise known as Herod the Great, was not a nice person. He gave new meaning to the word paranoid. So what we do know about him is, he did some incredible things. So, for example, he's the one who got the temple in Jerusalem, that was there in Jesus' day, he's the one who got that built. But people were terrified of him. They never knew what he was going to do next, and he did have a streak of paranoia that was very, very deep, and we know that at least one of his wives and at least two of his children were killed because he thought they were a threat to his power. And so when you have the Magi come in and saying, where's this new king who's been born? You can almost hear people in the background going, shh, don't say that too loud. We don't want that message to get to Herod, but it does. And Herod comes and invites them in and learns from them when the stars appeared, and calls the chief priests and the scribes together and says, where is this child to be born? And the chief priests and the scribes are able to go back and they say, well, okay, if he's going to be a son of David, he's supposed to be born in Bethlehem, and so in Bethlehem of Judea, that's where he will be born. So that gives the Magi the last piece they need to get close enough. And so they go on this journey, and they come to Jesus, and they find Jesus and Mary together, and they bow down and they worship and they give their gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. There's a lot out on social media right now about you have the after the three wise men came, the three wise women came bringing gifts that were actually useful. Bringing things like diapers and baby food and things like that. It's fun, it's cute and everything, but ultimately these Magi, they bring that which is valuable to them. Gold. We all know about gold. Gold has been valuable in cultures for a long time. Frankincense and myrrh were actually more valuable than gold. And there, you can go into all the different ways in which they're used in worship and all that, and in other pieces. But ultimately, I think the important thing is they were valuable to them. They were valuable in that culture, and they were valuable. Even though it wasn't what you would say, here's what a newborn baby needs, but it was what Jesus and his family needed. Because, again, the darker piece of the story is that, after the Magi leave by a different road, Herod throws a temper tantrum and orders that children under a certain age in Bethlehem are killed. And so this gold and frankincense and myrrh are what Jesus and Joseph and Mary are able to live off in this journey where they go to Egypt and they come back. And they have to reside in Egypt for a time until King Herod passes away. They bring that which they have. They bring that which was important to them, that which was valuable to them. And we do the same. There are times where we say, well, I don't have that much to give. I don't have that much, I think there are a lot of times that one of the things that advertising in our culture does is it makes us feel like we don't have enough, that we don't have anything that we can contribute. And the reality is that God has shaped us and formed us to be people who do have things to give. It may not be gold and frankincense and myrrh, but we do have time, and we do have talents, and we do have things that we can do that nobody else can do, that God has shaped us and formed us to be able to do. And there are ways in which that gets to become a part of God's story. These Magi, they were foreigners. They were people who didn't even worship God, and yet they come in, they bring their gifts, and they're made into be a part of God's story. They were people who had no expectation of being a part of this, and yet here they are. God is able to use them. God is able to use that which they bring. God is able to use us too. I know that people are in different situations in different places. And I know there are a lot of things that sometimes we don't feel like we can impact. So I was talking to a guy who works out with me frequently on Thursday, and I didn't know this until this week, but it's like, I work for Homeland Security. It means I haven't been paid in 3 weeks. Like, oh, yeah, and you have no control of that. You have no way in which you can impact that. You can't, there's nothing you can do that's going to go up to Washington and make things change in there, in that respect. Oh, okay, so, and yet, you still have something to offer in this time, in this space. I know there are people who are, in this time, maybe you're going back to work, maybe you're looking for work. Maybe you are retired, maybe you are going back to school tomorrow or Tuesday. Maybe all these things are going on, and in each of these situations, you have something that is valuable to you because you are valuable to God. You are valuable enough that God came down to be a part of your story, and God invites you to be a part of God's story. Whatever gifts you have to bring, whether they are the golden frankincense and myrrh of the wise men, whether it's, something as simple as changing diapers or going out to get baby food, those are gifts to bring. Those are things that God uses as a part of God's story. And I think there are lots of things to where we say, hey, I don't have anything that I can say that's valuable. And yet, God still has words for us to say. God still has things for us to be able to do, talents for us to be able to use. I do think that is part of this kind of 12 days of Christmas is, we can't give all the gifts in one day. We can't use everything that we have in one day. And when we need to remember that it's not just about what we can do on that high holy day, but it's what God enables us to do. It's the gifts that we're enabled to bring day after day, week after week, month after month throughout the year. That there are all these unexpected gifts that we open our eyes and we see that this day is a new day that God has given me. Here is this new place where God has given me a talent that I can use, or a gift that I can use that helps somebody else, or a shoulder that somebody can cry on, or an embracing set of arms when somebody needs a hug, or just that seeing somebody else and saying, I understand a little bit of what you're going through. These are sometimes the unexpected gifts. In a world that says there's not enough. I shared with the class I was teaching between services on Digital Age, a little quote called the Big Lie. We wake up in the morning and the first thing we may think is I didn't get enough sleep, and then I don't have enough time to get everything I need to do to get done. And we begin from that very moment starting to think of all the ways we don't have enough. And by the end of the day, we're starting to think about all the things we didn't get done, all the things that we don't have, all the things that we don't, that we can't do. And then it gets reinforced. You watch, whether it's watching TV or internet or listening to the radio or driving down the road, you have all these things. You need this. I don't have this. That God has given us, and I think part of the piece of that is God has given us that which we need for the mission God gives us. God has given us that which we need for this day that God has made. God has given us things that God can use to do incredible things, even though we look at them and say, it's just not that much. We are filled with unexpected gifts. In this season of Christmas, although the season itself may be ending, we also enter into the season of Epiphany, the season where we begin to realize the gifts that we've already been given. And we begin to use those things for the world that God has for us. So may you open your gifts this day. May you open that which God has given you this day, and may you use it to be a part of the story that God gives you. Because ultimately, that's a part of God's story as well. Thanks be to God.